Why don't we get started? Good morning, everybody. This is Christine Jacobs. I'm the Executive Director of Represent PA, a PAC that raises money and supports progressive women running for the Pennsylvania legislature and the Senate. Our goal is to flip Pennsylvania legislature blue with strong pro-choice progressive women. And we're really excited today that we have two of the women that we've worked with for a while on this call today. Next slide, please, Helen. We have Senator Amanda Cappelletti. She had interned at one point for Donna Bullock, who we've supported for years. She's worked with the ACLU and the Planned Parenthood, and she was elected for the first time to the Pennsylvania Senate in the actually this should say 2020. My mistake, in the 2020 election. We didn't have many real victories in 2020. And the fact that we elected her has been a joy and a pleasure to have. Senator Committa was elected in 2020. Again, my mistake when time marches on. Senator Carolyn Committa was the first woman mayor of Westchester in Chester County. We supported her for her in her elections for the 2 terms she had in the House of Representatives, and now she in the General Assembly, and now we helped to elect her to the Senate in 2020. Again, these were 2 seats that had both been held. They weren't party flips, but they were flips from Democratic men to Democratic women. And one of the things that I keep hearing from other women that we've elected and other members of the caucus is, thank you for sending us strong women who like to work together, who really know what it's like to put together a team and to be there for each other. And we're really excited to have them both on today's call. So a couple of things that have happened, a few things that of interest that have happened since the last time we had a breakfast briefing. There was a budget agreement reached. Whether it's a good increase or not, or a good budget, depends on who you talk to. No major cuts. The state ended up with a lot more money this year. Both revenues were a lot higher and because of federal money. And some significant increases were made in education funding, in food programs and in gun violence protection and prevention. And all of these things are real positives for Pennsylvania. But we sat with an extra $5 billion or so in unallocated federal money that could go towards all these other issues that we've talked about, all these areas where Pennsylvania needs help, whether it's the environment, whether education, gun violence protection, minimum wage, you name it. There are so many places that we could have used the money, and yet our legislature is sitting on the unallocated funds. There's discussion that more will happen in September, and so I'm hoping that, Senator Committa said she's up in Maine right now, I'm hoping you're all getting good vacations because there's a lot of work to be done in September. And I wanted to give you a brief update also on redistricting, which is going to be a big issue coming up. As we've talked about before, the Congress will go from 18, go from 18 representatives in the U.S. Congress to 17. Plans are drawn up in the legislature, which, as you all know, are both chambers are Republican controlled. But if the governor vetoes it, it goes to the Supreme Court. Fair Districts tried to help push in some clear rules about what would be used for redistricting. And of course, those were all voted down by the Republican legislature. So anticipate a lot of court battles here. And speaking of court battles, we're expecting a lot of issues related to the House and the Senate redistricting also. Yes, the committee is, this is the House committee, for example. Overall, there's 5-member committee to look at both the House and the Senate. There's the 2 Democratic leaders and the 2 Republican leaders, and a 5th person who's the former chancellor of the University of Pittsburgh. The first hearings are coming later this month, but it's going to be a very long, contentious process. Within the various caucuses, there's a lot of current Dems, for example, who want to make sure that their district looks better and gives them more votes and helps their percentages. But I can tell you that the Democratic leaders are both saying, hey, we just want the gavel. And we're going to put together the districts that are the fairest, and we're putting together our proposals now, and they're anticipating a very long, contentious process with the first hearings happening later this month. I also wanted to mention that, one of our causes is working on, we like to help elect women. And there are currently for the Democratic nomination for governor, there are no official candidates yet in Pennsylvania, but Josh Shapiro is widely expected to enter, and he's raising money like crazy. For the Senate, 3 candidates have already declared and 2 more are expected. There are some minor candidates also, but I didn't include them here. Represent has a cause of trying to flip the United States Senate also, and we have done federal events for women running for Senate from all over the country. And we're really pleased right now to know that there's a strong woman running for the United States Senate, and our federal PAC has chosen to endorse Dr. Valar Kush. It was announced yesterday that she raised over $1 million and has had the Emily's List endorsement, $1 million in her first quarter, and we're looking forward to seeing what she can do. And then why don't we move on to Amanda's slides? This discussion came up because people talk about Reggie, they talk about all kinds of issues related to the environment. One of our goals at Represent is really to help people to understand what are the issues in Harrisburg and why you should care. Our media is so focused on DC and without making enough emphasis on what the big issues are in Pennsylvania. So we do education, and we're trying to help you all to understand why you should care about the Pennsylvania legislature and give you all talking points that when you're sitting around the clam bake or the wine bar or the outdoor party this weekend, you can say, you know what? You know what's going on in Pennsylvania. And so Amanda Cappelletti, what should they be talking about?
We should be talking about Reggie. So what is Reggie? It is the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. The thing I want you to know about this is you see that it's a partnership between many northeastern states, all of the northeastern states except for Pennsylvania at the moment, and mid-Atlantic states. It goes as far south as Virginia, which we'll talk about in a little bit as it continues to expand. In many of these other states, if not all of them, Reggie has been passed through the legislative process. In Pennsylvania, because our legislature doesn't seem to truly appreciate what climate change is or what greenhouse gases do to our environment. And I use that in the broader term, not just our physical environment and Mother Earth, but to us as individuals. Many of you might remember that I have a master's of public health, so you're going to hear me talk about this from a public health perspective interspersed through all of this, because environmental policy is a big thing when we're talking about public health, because it really dictates the quality of life that all of us have. So in Pennsylvania, instead of going through the legislative process, Governor Wolf has decided that we would join it through the regulatory process. There is some, difficulties and pushback that we have through the legislature, but so far we are on track to join and participate in Reggie. What is it specifically? It's a partnership that's designed to cap and reduce carbon emissions from our fossil fuel fire plants. And in Pennsylvania, the electricity sector of energy is our second leading source of greenhouse gas emissions. And one of the reasons Reggie would be so important in addressing that issue is because since 2005, the states that have joined Reggie have significantly reduced their power sector CO2 pollution. So we've seen incredible outcomes that by participating in Reggie, an improvement in environmental health and in public health, and addressing carbon emissions has really gone down in the region. So if Pennsylvania joins, we can continue to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions and eventually really put Pennsylvania in a place to truly combat climate change. So as I said, it is it's a partnership among states. It's 11 states. It's a market-driven program for the electric power sector. The incredibly interesting piece, which you wouldn't know by the way Pennsylvania behaves, is that it was created by a bipartisan group of governors, which is 6 Republican governors, and that even as things have changed in all of these states that are participating, gone from Republican to Democrat, back to Republican, however it's looked for them, they're all still participating, and more states have joined. As I mentioned, right now it stretches from Maine all the way down to Virginia. Pennsylvania is getting on board, one of the last northeastern states to start, but North Carolina is also starting the process, which is really interesting. How does it work? Each state really designs what their implementation program looks like and how it's going to work within their state. And all of these states have said it's been a success. They've cut pollution by at least a third. They've raised billions of dollars to invest in energy efficiency and clean energy projects, and have reduced electricity. See a message, it wasn't clear about how Governor Wolf is joining Reggie. He put out an executive order for us to join Reggie. He's doing it through the regulatory process. So instead of it going through the General Assembly, he's done an executive order to have us join it, and he's going to develop regulations that have to go through, it's called it's the Regulatory Review Committee. So we're doing it through a regulatory process. Regulations are part of the executive's offices. All regulations are the executive branch of government, which is the governor's office in the state legislature, or in state government, excuse me. So we're doing it through that process as opposed to passing legislation requiring the state to join. Why do we need Reggie? So Pennsylvania is the 5th largest polluter of carbon dioxide, which is one of several or many greenhouse gas emissions that really contributes to climate change. And we know that the changing climate is already hurting us. In case you haven't noticed, we're in what feels like the 700th heat wave of this summer. And it's hurting us. Our temperatures are rising, and we're expected to have a 5.4 degree raise in our temperature by 2050. And we're already seeing more extreme weather and flooding and the damage that comes from those floods, which includes, our roads and our environment, our homes. We see more deaths from heat and respiratory ailments. Asthma is listed here, but think maybe COPD, other lung diseases. We see an increase in diseases like West Nile virus, Lyme disease specifically. This is one of the worst years for ticks because of the way our climate is changing, and a huge disruption to our agriculture. I know it says including dairy farms because we have a lot of them, but Pennsylvania is a really huge, has a really huge agricultural business in general. We produce a lot. We have a lot of farms, do a lot of different things, and all of those farms are having trouble, between dry spouts or over saturation of rain can really impact the way in which they can produce their fruits, their vegetables, their grains, whatever it might be that they have. So our economy is really being hit hard, the agricultural economy. And then when you think about, like I said, the public health, people with asthma and other respiratory diseases, we are all having significantly more difficult times breathing because of the poor air quality that we have. And I mentioned the infrastructure. You think about the money PennDOT has to spend on repair to roads that are damaged by floods and landslides. PennDOT's already struggling to stay solvent and be able to take care of our infrastructure, and we're adding to it through climate change. So by joining Reggie, we can help to address so many of these issues in a rather short period of time. So how does it work? As I mentioned, each state's going to be able to develop what it looks like to implement the program. But what essentially happens is that our large carbon polluting power plants are able to purchase allowances that are equal to the amount of the carbon dioxide emissions that they produce, and they can buy, sell, or trade their carbon allowances within their cap. So essentially they're paying for the dirty pollution that they're putting out into the air, and that incentivizes them to lower their emissions. When a power plant reduces their emissions below their allowance, they will have additional allowances that they can use either in the future or sell them to other power plants or trade them to other power plants and purchase it. What happens with that purchase? Who are they purchasing these allowances from? They're purchasing them from the government. And that money that they're using to purchase these allowances can be used for a number of things. And Senator Committa is going to talk about her bill on what we should be doing with that money. But the idea is that we would be investing it into energy efficiency and renewable energy to support vulnerable communities and other green energy or environmental purposes. Proven to help public health. Really what we're doing is creating a lot of indirect cost savings, because we know that the CO2 and the greenhouse gas emissions that get put out in the air by fossil fuel plants create poor air quality and is a detriment to our public health, causing a lot high incidence of asthma, lung disease, COPD, coronary artery disease, congestive heart failure. These things contribute to all of those respiratory issues. So, and it exacerbates all of those problems. And that costs the indirect cost of that is a significant amount of money, billions with a B of dollars into the healthcare system to take care of people that are suffering from these illnesses. We know that since we've joined Reggie, we have seen almost $6 billion in health savings, and Reggie started around 2008. So we've seen about almost $6 billion in healthcare benefits and savings in that. So imagine, I said we were the 5th largest polluter of carbon dioxide. Imagine what would happen, the types of indirect savings we would see if we invest in this program and we really do it right. It would go from almost 6 billion to who knows, 10 billion, 15 billion, and the quality of life gets significantly better. What does it do for our health? Well, let's talk about right now what we're seeing with greenhouse gas emissions. We are seeing about 639 deaths premature deaths per year, over 30,000 hospital visits per year, and about 83,000 lost workdays a year. So if we invest in Reggie and we become healthier because of Reggie, reduces carbon pollution by as much as 227 million tons per year. Or not per year, but that would be a general thing. We're looking at 6 billion in health benefits through 2030. We're looking at 45,000 fewer asthma attacks and over 1,000 fewer cases of childhood bronchitis. So you can see that that's a significant savings and an increase in our quality of health, especially for people who have asthma and have to, think about what's the quality of air and what kind of movement can I do outside, because it could trigger an asthma attack. Children that get bronchitis every year, that's a really difficult, respiratory illness that you get. And, once you get it, it feels like you just get it, regularly all of the time. So it's huge savings in all of that. And that's, like I said, COPD, coronary artery disease, congestive heart failure, all of these things, we would see improvements in those numbers across the state and the region, right? Because air quality doesn't just stay in Pennsylvania, it moves among states. So that might be what we see in Pennsylvania, but it'll help the whole region and by proxy, the earth, all of us that live here. What does it do for PA businesses and workers? It creates a significant amount of jobs. We're looking at least 27,000 jobs and a boost to the state's economy. We've got 2 billion listed here. I've read something else that says 3 billion. Estimates are different. What it's going to do, honestly, is accelerate an already growing industry. Currently in Pennsylvania, we have 94,000 clean energy jobs, and that is more than coal and natural gas jobs combined. So this is already a thriving industry in Pennsylvania, and investing in Reggie will accelerate that. What can we do for our vulnerable communities and that have been long impacted by pollution? I've been a big proponent from the beginning of my campaign to now is we need to think about unintended consequences when we pass legislation. We can't just say, oh, we passed this, it's good, it's going to do what we thought it was going to do and we're done. It doesn't often work like that. So we know Reggie is a really good tool, but we can't just stop there. We've got to take some of the money that we get from that and really look at communities that aren't necessarily next to that refinery or power plant. Think about some of the places down here in the southeast that have been harmed by those things. Those people will certainly be helped through Reggie, and we can invest there. But we should also be thinking about other communities that don't necessarily have that there, but maybe they don't have a lot of green space and they're affected and impacted by pollution and greenhouse emissions in different ways. Just really, making sure that we are thoughtful and thinking about the communities, the low-income communities and communities of color that have, long been detrimentally impacted by climate change and environmental pollution, and then investing in those communities to make sure that we are addressing those issues for them as well. This piece is really important. Coal-fired power plants are being replaced by natural gas, and I'm not a huge proponent of natural gas either, but there are other renewable, as we said, renewables are a huge market in Pennsylvania. We have more jobs there in clean energy than we do in natural gas and coal. Those things are really coming to the end of their life cycle, and those economies are changing. So what can we do? We can invest in those communities to ensure that those people transition from coal-fired power jobs to the clean energy market or something in that space, because we want to set people up for success. We don't want people to just lose their jobs, the plants close, end of story. And that's what Reggie can really do. Some of the money that we get can be invested in that too, thinking about what that looks like, because those things are going to close whether we do Reggie or not. That's the way the market is going. Let's prepare those people for that so that they don't fall off a cliff when it does happen. Bottom line, we need Reggie. Governor Wolf saw that and said, we're going to do it, and I'm going to find a way to do it, even if this Republican legislature doesn't believe in it. We are going to address climate change and pollution to protect the health of our people. We're going to invest in economies that are growing and thriving, so that the other people that are working in coal and natural gas and places like that have somewhere to transition to, and we support them in that, because we want Pennsylvanians to succeed. So Reggie is, as it says here, cleaner air, better health, it's action on climate, and it's more jobs. It's an economy changer, and hopefully Pennsylvania can become an energy leader in the United States. Really, just some information about how popular Reggie is. I think it's just important to see that that's here. We have the information, we have the polling and the statistics, because you will hear over and over again from our Republican counterparts that, this is a bad idea, nobody wants it, it's going to hurt, my district, it's going to hurt my district, it's going to tear down jobs, all of these different things. But as you can see, the polls have been done. We have public comments and public hearings where we found that 9-1 on average, people supported Reggie. So there we go. That's the last bit of information. As you can see, the jobs are listed there, the number of residents that really believe in this, what it's going to do for us. That's what Reggie is. That's why we support it, and that's why we're, Senator Committa and I are fighting hard to continue to push, not just for Reggie, but for Senator Committa's bill that she's going to talk about, that's going to ensure that we use that money wisely.
Thank you, Senator Cappelletti. A lot of information. So Senator Committa, tell us about your bill.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning. Good morning, Represent, friends and colleagues. Thank you, Senator Cappelletti, for that wonderful overview of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. And Bill, thank you for your question or your recommendation that I look closely at what's happening in Maine. They have some wonderful environmental protections, and indeed, reading all the newspaper with everything, lots to learn and bring home. And Chris, before I get into my bill, you mentioned collaboration. That is a quality and let's say an approach that women tend to bring to their roles. And this bill is Senate Bill 15, which is a bill that will help guide how the Reggie proceeds are invested, and I will get into that in a moment, is a collaboration of the governor's office, DEP, the environmental justice community, labor, environmental organizations, and so on. We've been working on this for months. So, so let me share with you a little bit about that. As Senator Cappelletti summarized, we know that joining Reggie is going to bring significant economic, environmental, public health, consumer cost savings, and job growth benefits. It's a huge win for the people and businesses and environment in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is the 5th largest emitter of carbon pollution in the United States, making it one of the most significant sources of carbon emissions in the nation and indeed in the world. Did you know that Pennsylvania emits 1% of the carbon on the planet? Our state emits 1%. Think about that. Reggie is able to play a leading role in cutting emissions, growing the economy, and reducing energy rates. So according to the DEP modeling, by participating in Reggie, Pennsylvania will reduce climate pollution from carbon emissions by a massive 188 million tons just by 2030. And at the same time, joining Reggie is going to create tens of thousands of jobs and pump hundreds of millions of dollars into the economy. So again, projections show that Reggie would add $1.9 billion to the gross state product in Pennsylvania by 2030. As you can see in chart 1, participating Reggie states have significantly reduced their carbon emissions while realizing growth in their GDP. So Reggie opponents have repeatedly raised concerns regarding electric rates, and that is an important concern. We do expect a short-term increase in rates when Reggie is first implemented. Excuse me. However, states have found that Reggie can help suppress wholesale prices by reinvesting the allowance money in energy efficiency and in renewables. And this is a part of my bill, Senate Bill 15. So as you cannot see now in chart 2, projections show that Pennsylvania firm power prices and average monthly electric bills are already rising without Reggie. With Reggie and Reggie Investments, they should level off and begin to decline in a few years. So the science definitely is supporting the very real and growing dangers of climate change for everyone, as we know, including consumers, families, businesses, and workers. The numbers show that investments in clean energy and programs like Reggie are offering a promising and economically beneficial path forward. In total, Reggie proceeds in participating states have amounted to billions of dollars. So in charts 3 and 4, this outlines the proceeds from participating states. And Reggie participating states have invested over half the proceeds into energy efficiency, generating an even bigger bang in the form of new jobs, customer utility bill savings, and public-private investment. According to another study, since it took effect in 2009, carbon emissions from power plants in Reggie states have fallen by 47%. This decline is 90% greater than the rest of the United States. Meanwhile, economic growth in the Reggie states has outpaced the rest of the country by 31%. So how have other states, how have the Reggie states specifically invested Reggie funds? The next chart, chart 5, shows that information by category and by recipient type. It includes energy efficiency, renewable greenhouse gas abatement, and bill assistance programs. In Pennsylvania, we also aim to invest our RGGI proceeds with an emphasis on the environmental justice communities. I had mentioned at the beginning the coalition of groups and individuals that we had work with us on our RGGI investment bill. And the environmental justice communities are at the heart of the conversation and at the investment of the proceeds. But the important point here is that just like climate change, the transition to a clean energy economy is coming. It's coming quickly. Just look what's happening in the business community in large multinational corporations like BP, First Energy, Exelon, Mars, Nestle, Westinghouse, and others embracing clean energy goals. Major auto manufacturers like GM are going all electric. The US Chamber of Commerce recently came out in support of a market-based approach to climate change to accelerate reductions in greenhouse gas emissions across the US economy. Even labor organizations like the United Mine Workers are supporting President Biden's plan to move away from coal and fossil fuels in exchange for a, quote, true energy transition, end quote, that includes jobs and job training in renewable energy. So the transition is coming. In fact, it's already underway. It's inevitable. So our goal through RGGI is to ensure that no one is left behind. RGGI can help ensure that every impacted worker, family, and community has an opportunity not only to survive, but thrive in the clean energy economy. So how do we do that? Here are some examples from other states. 6. In crafting Pennsylvania's RGGI investment plan, we've looked closely at what our neighbors are doing and where they're succeeding with strategic investments in community energy transition, workforce development, and economic revitalization. So it's also important to note why we need this legislation in Pennsylvania. So this is in charts 7 and 8, under current law, without legislation stipulating an investment structure, RGGI proceeds would, under current law, go into the Clean Air Fund of the DEP, where they have a much more limited scope and impact. As you can see in chart 9, the Clean Air Fund is focused primarily on air quality. It does not allow proceeds to be invested in workers and communities impacted by the transition to clean energy. So our legislation, Senate Bill 15 and Representative Herron's companion bill, House 1565, the RGGI Investments Act is the product of extensive meetings with key stakeholders across the Commonwealth, as I had mentioned, including, again, environmental advocacy, environmental justice, renewable energy, labor groups, and communities. As you can see from the investment chart, investment structure that's in chart 10, the legislation enables Pennsylvania to use proceeds from RGGI to assist environmental justice communities, workers affected by energy transition, and Pennsylvania's growing clean energy, commercial, and industrial sectors. The legislation establishes the Energy Communities Trust Fund to support investments in coal communities for workforce development, career transition, and job training small business growth, and providing resources to school districts and other community assets. In addition, it invests in public health and infrastructure guardrails in environmental justice communities that have long shouldered a disproportionate pollution burden. The Environmental Communities Trust Fund provides for investment in community health services, benefits for retired workers whose pension or health plans may be at risk, and support for local governments and school districts facing reduced tax revenues as plants shutter. Again, no one should be left behind. No one should be left stranded by the transition to clean energy. Coal plant owners are already shuttering their facilities as we speak, not because of Reggie, but due to market forces. And the trend will continue with or without Reggie. If Pennsylvania is to continue being an energy leader, which we have been for generations, Reggie and the Reggie Investments Act are the way forward. In fact, they are the only way forward. There's no other plan on the table for workers, families, and coal communities to equitably transition to the clean energy economy. So Senate Bill 15 and House Bill 1565 make it possible to use the Reggie proceeds in a more expansive manner. It's a way to serve all Pennsylvanians and give communities new investment and a hand at determining their own futures. This is about preparing for the future. It is about empowerment and adaptability in the face of change. So that's the overview of the Reggie Investments Act and the expanded spending opportunities under this Senate Bill 15. And was just thinking before I end my presentation, I wanted to share, it's interesting, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is supporting Cap and Invest programs. Let's not forget that we all know environmental issues, public health issues, business issues are not and should not be political issues. They have become politicized. But, long before we talked about Reggie, there was and still is a group of national Republican leaders, former Secretary of State Schultz and Baker. One of you might remember the name of the group, but anyway, they came up with the cap and trade plan decades ago and have been supporting that. And of course, the first Earth Day was celebrated under President Nixon. So let's just remember that these issues are not partisan, and hope that our colleagues on the other side of the aisle will begin to follow in the footsteps of some of their predecessors and join us in shaping a clean energy future for Pennsylvanians. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Senator Committa. We're going to go into some questions. I wanted to make a comment. I put a couple comments in. As many of you know, I refer to this phase of my life as my atonement phase, because for many years I ran power plants, and including all of Exelon's non-nuclear plants. So I know all about how coal plants run and how they pollute. But cap and trade, as Senator Committa said, was really started by Republicans, and was started as a free market way of managing these things. The companies had a choice whether to pollute or whether to clean up their pollution or pay for additional allowances. And somehow, like everything else related to climate change, this has become very political, as the senator said. But I have a question that ties to, both senators' comments together, and that's that. So we heard that this is very popular. We heard that a lot of other states do it. We heard that 70% or something of the population do it. We heard that long-term, this is going to help energy prices and help health and all of those kind of things. So what are the arguments against it? Besides the fact, I know that in the Energy Committee of the House, I'd heard that this is the first year they've been allowed to even mention the expression climate change. And that's only because they had somebody appear who's a climate change denier. But what are you all hearing as being things that, reasons that your colleagues are against this?
Well, everything, and Senator Cappelletti, please, add on here. But what I have heard for my years in the House and now in the Senate is it's going to be a job killer, and that energy prices are going to go up. So it's going to hurt everybody, consumers and also the business community. And so that is the, and that is the, that seems to be the theme of opposition. What are you hearing, Senator Cappelletti?
I think I hear those same things. Job killer, costs are going to go up. One of the things that sits in my mind when I think about this is Senator Pittman talking about the coal fire plant in his district, and in some weird mental gymnastics that he does, he admits that the market's moving in the direction that we're talking about, and that the coal plant's going to close, but why rush it? Why make it happen sooner? And part of it is really, I think part of it is a genuine denial of climate change and what it is and how serious the issue is. That they may not come outright and say it, but I feel like that's the underlying tone, is and I think this applies on many topics, is the science is wrong, the science isn't real, whatever it might, they're kind of thinking there. I think that's kind of this undertone, even if they're not saying it. Why rush the closing of the coal fire plant? Well, climate change, the damage to the public health. If it's going to close in the future anyway, and we know it's going that way, then why not prepare your community for that closure and the shift to a new economy that can help reinvigorate the overall economy of your district? I just don't understand how we're not reaching that point. We're not being forward thinking enough to say, let's plan for that closing.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm cynical enough to believe that it has to do with the amount of lobbying and donations made by the oil industry, both the drillers, the coal companies, the big companies, the little ones. I'm kind of biased on, cynical on that one. And that's, so two things we need to do. One is we need to elect legislators who are not beholden to the oil and gas industry and who recognize the data and the science and what's going to happen here. And the other thing is, and somebody, Mitchell Rothman commented that we need to work directly with businesses to work on environmental improvement. Companies like Exelon did it because they saw this coming longer term, but also because they were getting a lot of push by their consumers and a lot of people flipping from buying their power from oil and gas to, whatever environmental options there are. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that, back to what Senator Cappelletti said about Senator Pittman, who represents a district in southwestern Pennsylvania that has coal plants and a coal plant, and he's very concerned about his people and his community. I get that. We all get that, which is why we want to be able to put money, invest money into their clean energy transition. But I asked him about it. I talked with him about about Senate Bill 15, and I said, this will, direct revenue to help your workers, to help your community. Is it something you could support? He said, I'm not against the idea of Reggie. What I'm against is the governor going through the regulatory process and not passing Reggie through a legislative process. So there is a process issue here as well. Now, I did not point out to him, but we all know that the legislature is not passing Reggie, anytime in our lifetime. So, or at least at this particular time. So the only way to do it is to go through, for the governor to go through the regulatory process. And I see Mitchell Rothman has a question. He says, we know that no bill sponsored by a Democrat will be approved by the current Republican legislature, to my point. So how can we work directly with businesses to promote environmental improvement? So this Reggie Investments Act, we know is not going to be passed in the legislature. And as I said, we've done a lot of work with a lot of people to figure out an investment spending framework, right? So is it for nothing? Is it just for show? No, it is a very important framework moving forward that that the DEP will use, perhaps be able to expand the Clean Air Fund in some ways, but if they can, this will be a framework to show them how. So that's important. And the business piece of it, Mitchell, is really the key here. As I mentioned and Christine mentioned, these major fossil fuel companies and other companies are going green. They are, because their customers, their shareholders, their employees are all demanding it. They're not, you'd like to think they just want to be, good stewards and, and do the environmental and public health right thing. But the point is their bottom line is going to be impacted if they just respond to the call for a clean energy future. So I think the businesses, and Shell is one I've been talking with. They, of course, have the cracker plant they're building out in Western Pennsylvania. They want to be a leader in the clean energy future of Pennsylvania. So think about that.
Yeah,
so I think the business community is already.
I was going to say, I believe that one when they close that plant. I'll believe that one when they close that plant. Yeah. Because the cracker facility's goal is to make more plastics. Amanda, other comment?
Yes, I would actually really like to speak to what Senator Committa had mentioned about this is a real process issue. I don't know that I would characterize it as a process issue. I think it is a partisan issue. They're mad. Let's say the tides were turned and we had a Republican governor and a Democratic held legislature, and the Republican governor chose to do this process or a process through the regulatory through regulation as opposed to through the General Assembly. They wouldn't be mad about it then. This isn't a real process issue. This is a Democratic governor trying to do something, and they want to stop the Democratic governor from having any kind of a win. That's really what it's about. It's not at all about the process, how it's been done, or anything like that. He may not be totally opposed to what Reggie is, and maybe many of our Republican colleagues aren't opposed to it, but they're opposed to a Democratic governor having any kind of a real win. And that's what this fight is really about.
Absolutely.
Yes, we got to call it like it is. There was a question further back in the line in the chat about why energy prices will go down with Reggie. Is there a couple sentence explanation to that?
Why energy prices will go down with Reggie?
Yeah, you mentioned that somebody had mentioned that they were going to go up temporarily, and then other states have seen them go down. Just wondered what the driver of them going down was. Is it that much cheaper to provide renewables after the market gets going?
That is my understanding, but I can send you an answer to that question. I want to make sure I get you a factual answer. But Amanda, Senator Cappelletti, do you have anything to add there?
I believe you're correct. I think, I believe, and I'll allow Senator Committa to send, correct information, but I believe the reason the prices fluctuate a little bit is because there is an initial investment that goes into being greener, so to speak, and ways and mechanisms to reduce carbon emissions that companies can demonstrate to like the PUC that rates need to go up and things like that. And once that happens, they'll see rates, but then the rates will go back down because the investments have been made, and the cost that it takes to create energy also decrease then, so it won't stay around for long, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and to add to that, Senator Cappelletti, my understanding, and I will confirm this and send you the info, Christine, but the prices are going to go up because of the initial transition and so on, but the prices are not going to be less than they are today. They'll go back down to about, whatever they are today, but there will be revenue generated through the Reggie Investments Act that can be distributed to customers, low-income customers, to help set their electric bills. It from the start of Reggie and also moving forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you to both of you. This really fits into the goals of, and this whole discussion about Reggie and the bill that Senator Committa is talking about really fits into the broad umbrella of the Green New Deal, which is we need to make changes. We need to provide funding so that our people can make those changes, and we need to have changes coming up. And so many parts of President Biden's infrastructure plans go right to this and go right to helping, including the drive towards electric vehicles and things like that. So and the real thing I wanted everybody to hear out of this is you got two goals out of this. One is you should be calling your local energy supplier. You should be calling corporations and letting them know that you believe in this and you want their support. And the other thing is, oh, by the way, we need to flip both chambers in Harrisburg, because none of this is really going to happen until the gavel is in the hands of the Democratic leadership. It's just the way it is. We all have to just know and not be naive about it. So thank you very much to our two senators. We're so lucky that we helped to elect. We're so proud that we helped elect you in 2020, and we're looking forward to great things from both of you, particularly once we get you into the majority.
Yes.
Right now, you just have to keep fighting the good fight, and I know in September it's going to be awful again. So thank you. Can I have my last slide? Okay, so what are your next steps? I mentioned two really important parts of it in terms of the energy and what you can be doing. We're updating our website. Watch for big changes there. Volunteer with us. And then we have just scheduled late last night our next briefing, which is going to be July 23rd. Catherine Colbert and Julie Kay have recently written a book called Controlling Women, What We Must Do Now to Save Reproductive Freedom. Those names may sound familiar because they were the attorneys who did the Planned Parenthood versus Casey Law legal suit many years ago, which helped to establish women having more control over their bodies in terms of birth control. And Senator Cappelletti, who used to be with Planned Parenthood, is very aware of this issue. So we're in the process of putting that together. Watch for the invitation to come. Watch for everything else coming from us. We'll have a grand kickoff in September with some of our legislative leaders to really talk about what needs to happen and what's going on in 2021 to prepare for 2022. So again, thank you to everybody for joining us today, and have a good and productive day.
Thank you.